Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we are joined by three recent graduates from the TriOS College Paralegal program, and they're going to talk to you a bit about their journey in the program, going through the licensing process, and where they're at now. I think everyone has finished in the last year now. Actually, I was going to say 6 months, but it's been a year now. So today, I'm joined by Natalie, Paige, and Pilar. So maybe we'll go alphabetically. And I'll start with you, Natalie. You can just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we get going. And thanks for all three of you for joining today.
Okay, so how long should I make this introduction?
Just a few quick words there is fine.
All right. So I started off bartending for the past few years and eventually sort of realized that I wanted a little bit more out of a career, and I've always had an interest in law. So I gave the TriOS paralegal program a shot. I ended up liking it a lot. Went through the process of it, and shortly afterwards, not too shortly, but I wrote the licensing exam in March and I passed it, and thankfully my placement held on to me, so I'm currently working for them at the moment and just kind of seeing what blows my way.
Perfect. They're very short, sweet, to the point there. Thanks, Natalie. Paige?
Thanks, JP, for having us. We went from students who were watching the podcast and now we're on it. So this is pretty cool. But I graduated the TriOS paralegal program in September of 2022. And then I became a licensed paralegal in January 2023 this year. So it was a really great experience, and I look forward to delving into it a little bit more with my classmates here.
And finally, Pilar?
I same as Paige. I graduated in September, and I got my license in January. So I'm about to start a new job as a paralegal or legal assistant, and I'm happy to be here to help.
Perfect. So thanks to all three of you. And I know a little bit you alluded there in terms of what you were doing before the program. And as you know, I mean, both within the three of you and some of your classmates, there's people coming from different backgrounds, different opportunities. We have people who were lawyers overseas and they're coming here to get a paralegal license. We have people who had no practice or no experience with the law. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background there. And Natalie, you're saying, you were bartending and you were like, hey, I'm going to start this program. Kind of what went into your thought process of taking the paralegal program, and let's go from there.
So it was actually a little bit unexpected. I did really enjoy the law class that I had in high school. I remember really being into that one, but initially I actually wanted to go to be a paramedic. And I started looking around for programs to do with that. And then as I was going through the list of the programs that TriOS offered, I noticed paralegal right next to that. I was like, oh, I remember really liking law, so let's just give this a shot. And I went through it, and it kind of just sort of fit. So that's kind of how I found my way there. But it's not like I really kind of went into it planning to be in law. It just sort of happened, and I kind of just rode with it.
And I guess for anyone that doesn't have like a law background, I mean, you took a course in high school. Did you feel that was something that was necessary, or how did you kind of adapt through getting into the legal courses that come out, intro to legal and in legal research and writing kind of near the beginning? How did you find that in terms of your previous education to jump into something there?
There definitely were some things that I kind of recognized, but it only really went as far as like knowing like, oh, plaintiff is the person that's starting the action, defendant is the one that's like defending themselves, like the most basic things that you can think of, or like some Canadian law. But it definitely did give me a taste for it, not so much in like giving me the knowledge to prepare myself for it, but it just sort of gave me like the feel of like whether this is something that I would want to explore further or not.
Perfect. And now to you, Paige. I mean, certainly you have a different background coming into the program. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you were doing before joining the program and how you found that helped, or did it help as much as you thought it would in terms of doing the accelerated program at TriOS?
Yeah, so I have always wanted to work in the legal field. It's always been something that I've had as a goal. And I was actually attending law school in the United Kingdom. I still am through a currently online because of COVID, because of the pandemic. So I was doing that. I had worked for real estate law firms as well. And during COVID, I found I had a little bit more free time than I normally would, even with working and being in school. And then I discovered the paralegal program, and I looked into the scope of law a little bit of a paralegal in Ontario because I wanted that Ontario-based law knowledge that I wasn't getting from the program in the United Kingdom. So when I started looking into that and saw the scope of a paralegal, and saw that it was only a 1-year program and that you could really get that certification and work really practically in the law field. So I could know that that's something I was passionate about and kind of affirm that passion I had for working in the legal field. I took the program and I found it was extremely practical, the knowledge that you acquire for working in Ontario. So yeah, for me, it was definitely worth it. And I feel really grateful to have come across it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting there. Obviously, you were in law school, or you're still in law school, and throughout the program, that you would have started, I think, September 2021, finished September 2022, wrote your exam a couple months later, got through the final steps, waiting for the results, and here we are in June 2023, and you've already had your license, and you've been working with it over the last 5-6 months. So, I mean, when you look at that from start to finish, that's about 18 months. I mean, where you're already working for a few months as a licensed paralegal. Do you think that, in that time period, I mean, while you're still, in law school, that, that's a different option that, a lot of people coming out of, even high school or university think, hey, I want to go to law school. In high school, they got to go to university first, then they get a university degree, and then they look at law school. So what would you do in terms of comparing that, and as well, doing it kind of the way you've done it? Because I know certainly there are people that finish this program and then they do what you're doing and going to law school in various schools in England, in Ontario, in Australia. So how did that all kind of fit together?
Well, it didn't really fit together for me. I just came across it as it came. So I think for a lot of people, it could be definitely a lot more of an accelerated process and potentially less costly if you want to be a paralegal, you want to work in law, and you're okay with the limited scope of a paralegal, and you just want to work in the field and help promote access to justice, that you could do it straight out of high school and you could have a lot less school debt, and you could just get out there and start working right away. But for me, I was shocked to learn that you could do it in such an accelerated time period, because I started a year before I started the paralegal program, law school, and I am still in law school. But what does fit together for me is kind of the principles and the knowledge that you do acquire, because some things that we covered in the paralegal program, I was like, oh, I already learned this in law school. So I just feel like you're gaining even more knowledge, and you're able to practice and apply the things that you learn kind of through both programs. So for that, I found it was really interesting and good for me to be able to apply what I learned in the paralegal program in law school and also in my work, and vice versa. So it's just been an interesting journey for me, but it could definitely, some people also, they take the paralegal program and they say, oh, I want to go to law school as well. And I want to further this because I really enjoy it and I'm learning so much and I want to expand my scope. So for me, it kind of all happened at the same time. And a lot of people, it might happen differently, but the paralegal program is a really good option for people who don't want to be a lawyer, but still want to work in the legal field. And you can do so much with it. There's so much you can do. So many different paths that it could take you within the legal field. So, yeah.
And Pilar, again, your journey is even different than Natalie's and Paige's. So maybe you could tell us a bit about, how you got into law and how the program was in making that decision. And for people, again, from the same kind of setup, what do you think that they would like to know based on your own experience?
Okay, well, now I'm Canadian, but I was an immigrant, and I had an interest in law since I was a teenager, but I didn't go to law school back home. Back home is Chile. Because I didn't want to be like stationed in a place and not being able to move around. So I studied translation, and when we got to Canada with my husband, um, everything happened very quickly. And then I found myself working at the Chilean consulate, and all these legal terms and, for example, jurisdiction or the immigration issues we face with people wanting to go to Chile started to, like light a fire, sorry, in my head, like, okay, I have some basic knowledge about law, and I can expand this, and I can actually help more people. So I checked TriOS, and it was the only college that allowed me to work full time, fulfill all my responsibilities, and still being able to graduate with distinction. So I'm really happy that I did it, that I went to TriOS and chose this paralegal program because, of course, if I'm being honest, the money issue is a big one. Law school was too expensive for me, and that wasn't realistic. Um, and now, like, it took me a year to study. Then we took the exam in November, and we got our licenses in January, and now I'm starting a new job. So everything is fast, but I'm happy where I am because I'm taking the advantage that I actually needed to do from a long time ago to help more people, and that's what makes me happy. So I know as a paralegal, I might be able to help you in a limited scope, but that's what makes me feel that I'm successful.
And I guess that in terms of that timeline, and again, just as I was asking Paige, right? I mean, within 18 months, right? That or a little bit more now that you're starting next week, right? Is that that you've gone from having this idea, from working at the Chilean consulate, finishing a program, writing the licensing exam, and now having this license and starting to use it. And so for anyone who's kind of thinking about, maybe new to Canada or newish to Canada, and they may have a law background, or they may not even have a law background, and they're interested in the law here, I mean, for various reasons, what would you say kind of to them about, going through a program like this and thinking, hey, this might be too difficult for me, and then sometimes there's this apprehension of, what do I know? I don't know anything about the law. English may not even be my first language. I haven't been to school in how many years, right? So what would you kind of say, or in having all of those things in your corner there, that you can advise someone thinking about the same stuff now?
Just do it. Like, man, I didn't panic, but if you stop yourself, if in Spanish we say, if you cut your wings before you even try to fly, you won't do it and you will regret it. You need to try, because first, the program is there to teach you. If you have a basis, or if you have the time to read before starting, amazing. But it's not your duty, because that's why you're paying a school to teach you. Then if you have the motivation to, get a better job, get a better life, or more money for your family as an income, go do it. Okay, if English is not your first language, as is in my case, go study more. I think we all need that motivation. And if I was able to do it, you are able to do it for real. We had classmates that are moms or fathers, and they did it. So keep those thoughts away and just do it. Go ahead. Yes.
All right, so thanks, Pilar. I'm going to go back to Natalie now, and I'm going to go through these with all three of you in terms of, advice for new or prospective students, right, who might be listening to this, and thinking again about doing the program, or people that are in the program already and maybe near the starting of the program, and struggling or maybe wondering kind of, how to get through the program. What advice, what tips, what would you say again generally for either people thinking about the program and then people that are currently in the program of getting through and making it to the end? So I'll start with you, Natalie.
Probably the biggest piece of advice that I would give is don't compare yourself to others. It doesn't matter what grades other people get on their exams. A lot of people will be willing to share those, or whether they got 100% on assignment or not. Don't compare yourself to them. Just take it at your own pace. Make sure to ask questions. I myself know I have a difficulty with that. Even if I'm questioning something, I'm afraid of what students will think of me if I ask the teacher that question, or whether it's oh, this person's not paying attention at all. Don't think that. You're there to learn. You're not there to give an impression to other people. You're there to take from it what you want. So involve yourself as much as you feel comfortable with. And again, just do not compare yourself to others, because it's just going to give you a limitation that you really do not need while you're studying.
Paige?
So I said this a little bit before, but the knowledge that you receive is so practical. So some advice for people who are currently in the program is, when you're learning these things like how to fill out Ontario court forms or calculating pre and post judgment interest or legal software applications, those are all really valuable tools that I really did utilize after the program. So just really visualize yourself utilizing these skills that you're learning throughout your career, because it's more than an assignment. It's training and building you to be a competent licensee. So just looking towards those future goals. And another thing that also JP had mentioned numerous times while we were in the program, and it really rings true, is the importance of building meaningful professional relationships and networks within the program, because this is a relatively small industry and you will run into classmates or professors or people that you met throughout your program. And the legal system is really complicated and hard to navigate, which is why it's important to have access to justice and be competent and have people that you can rely on and talk to and network with when you have questions, or if they're more competent or skilled in areas that you are not, to assist you. So I've already reached out to some of my peers for the work that I'm doing now that I know that, oh, they covered this in their placement, so maybe they can assist me with this. Or I've sent an email out to a general inbox for an organization, and someone I know from our paralegal program emailed me back, hey, Paige, this is how you do this. And I felt so much more comfortable asking them more questions to understand the process because I built a relationship with them in the program.
Thanks, Paige. Pilar?
Everything they both said, and also be present, because one of the things that I've seen or noticed is that you go to school, you study, but then if we have an event or if we have something meaningful for our program or for our relationships or networking, most people don't show up, and that's very bad for yourself, because I've met a lot of people in events. I had the pleasure to work with JP and my classmates or colleagues now. And we built something that is important for me. Besides being colleagues or professionals of the law, I feel they're my friends. So if you are a newcomer and you feel alone, here's your chance to make new friends, but meaningful relationships. So yes, everything the guy said.
So if you go back and look at the year or so that you were in the program, I mean, what are the things that stand out, and what are the highlights? What did you really enjoy? And again, I'm hearing a lot of practical knowledge and experience there, and how that kind of translates to what you were doing on your internship and beyond. So maybe hopefully you'll have different things you want to highlight, but I'll start with Natalie, and then we'll go over to Paige and Pilar to follow.
So much for different things you want to highlight. I was just going to touch back on what Paige and Pilar was saying with the meaningful relationships that you build with the program. That's definitely one of the better things that I kind of took out of it. And once again, also back to what Paige was saying, the practical knowledge, like there have been a lot of times when like there was even the paralegal that I work for, he hasn't done a small claims garnishment in, he said, about 5 years or so. So he wanted me to look into it. And that actually I took a lot from school with putting, like giving him that information and filling him on, like reminding him of how to do it. A lot of that I just remembered from classes and everything, and exactly where to look to find all of this information. So definitely those two things. Yeah, the relationships and the practical knowledge.
Paige, do you have any more sage advice here for everyone?
And it even surprises me to say this, but looking back, some of the things I dreaded doing the most in the program probably helped me the most. So a lot of group work is dreadful for a lot of people and for me as well. But looking back and seeing that the skills that you build from it in terms of like whether it be, you know, presentations or like mediating, again, it's really practical, and it does help you because you do have, you're serving the public in this position, so you don't get to pick and choose who you're serving or who you're working with. So even though a lot of times you just want to get the work done, get the certification, you don't want to have to interact with other people and do group work because you want your grades to be a reflection of yourself and yourself only. That stuff is really valuable, and especially in the real world, in the real professional field.
Pilar, how about yourself?
How can I say this? Of course, I learned everything from the program, but the fact that I'm doing legal memos or writing correspondence to official authorities in a daily basis was so helpful, because when we started, I was like, how do I do this? And I panicked, but then I didn't panic because I got to mix both knowledges, like from the paralegal program and from my work, and I'm getting better at writing. Also, from the program, I've been able to help some members of the public with, not with their legal issues, but with their questions about legal issues. For example, how do I get my divorce certificate? Because it was so long ago, where do I go? And they don't know how to search for something. So that's been really valuable for me. What else? And in the internship, one of the main things my lawyer mentioned is that thanks to the program, I was able to pay attention to detail and focus myself on the things that are important, so I can be a valuable member of her team.
Thanks, Pilar. And you brought up their writing and certainly memo writing, legal memo writing, legal research and writing, right? In terms of just even memos to file and putting stuff together. And that kind of one of the earlier courses, right? And as well, legal communication and writing, which relates to the correspondence you send out and things like opinion letters. So, I mean, in terms of, that tends to be for people who are getting into the program. That's kind of like the first, if it wasn't maybe the computers, the first, well, hey, this is really challenging, right? How do I change my writing? Even if you have, like in Paige's case, a university background where the writing style is different when you're doing legal writing compared to what you may be used to. So maybe any advice there in terms of from your different backgrounds, getting into that course, and then everything that follows tends to build on it, except instead of a general situation, you have a tort situation, you have a criminal situation, you have an employment situation, and you're kind of doing the same kinds of research and writing in assignments and activities and things like that. So that'll start with you. Kind of how did you kind of approach that, given the background that you had in developing and strengthening your legal writing?
Sorry, was that to me?
Yeah, back to you, Natalie.
Okay. So with the writing, I actually always felt more comfortable with creative writing. So that was definitely a switch that I had to do, where like I had to put it more academically than I would like in terms of a story. But a lot of the time I ended up kind of like sort of just kind of getting back into that naturally, because a lot of the time when you're kind of when you're summarizing a case to like write down a memo about it, it's technically a story, more or less, and you're sort of like recounting it in like a summarized sort of version, but still trying to keep it academic. So that definitely gave me the most practice with that. Like not writing it out like I'm building characters or anything, but more just kind of like getting right to the point, saying the facts as they are. So that it definitely gave me a lot more practice in that with school, and kind of making that come a little bit more naturally to me than like having it be all like rigid.
Thanks, Natalie. Paige?
I think going to university first definitely probably gave me an advantage in terms of this program, in terms of writing. It's more about dwindling things down, because in university you're using so many peer-reviewed resources, resources, and you're referencing so much. And then here it's very practical, and you're referencing the case, and then you're dwindling it down to the basic facts and then your interpretation of those facts. So I had to work a little bit to make sure it was very basic and dwindled down and practical. But maybe I'll say a controversial statement here. I would suggest to anybody in terms of writing to not use ChatGPT, definitely, like, at all, because I've already heard of cases in the United States where lawyers have gotten in trouble for referencing that. And make sure you use the softwares like LexisNexis and Canly, and that you're basing your work on real cases, and that you really build up that legal writing yourself, because when it comes from you, it will be so much more, you'll just gain that knowledge. The more you write, the more you reference, the easier it will become in the long run.
Clara, over to you.
If English is not your first language, first go back to the basics, review the grammar, the spelling. If you're not sure, look it up, take your time. And also remember that the structures in different languages are different. So it might sound obvious, but don't forget you're writing in English, formal, legal, period. And go over the case again, reread it, and start from scratch. For example, I used to do a lot of paper and I use a lot of colors. So that helped me to make something clearer for my memos or any legal writing that I was requested. Yeah, those are my suggestions.
Perfect. So I'm going to switch over now. We're kind of halfway here. And for the students that may be listening to this now who have finished the program, and then they're like, well, what happens next? Right. And I know tomorrow we're going to do this in person, but for anyone that may not have the opportunity to come and watch, or is now thinking about it, it's too late to come back in time to June the 21st. So if they're watching this later, after you finish the program, I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about the internship piece, and then let's start with that. What was your internship experience was like? And I know, Natalie, obviously you're still working for your internship host in a different capacity now, but maybe tell us a little bit about how you found the internship.
He actually represented me in a former matter of mine. And when we were all kind of scrambling to find where we're going to find our internships, that was the first place that I thought. I was like, well, like, I know one person in the field, so why don't I just ask them first? And so I just sent off one email. I was like, hey, do you take interns? He's kind of like, yeah, welcome aboard. So it actually was pretty easy getting that one. And then gradually he started me off with the simplest stuff, like just kind of checking up on like cases, whether any trials have been booked or anything with them. And then eventually just sort of putting on more and more responsibilities as I got comfortable with them. And now I'm like filing charter arguments and serving them on prosecutors and everything. So like it kind of builds its way up. So he started me off from like right the basics and just kept inclining like the the responsibilities and like the level of responsibility I was taking on, which is nice, because if I had gone straight to someplace that immediately threw a bunch of things at me, I know that I would have gotten overwhelmed and likely would have kind of started to doubt myself and like wanting to give up. So I'm glad that I sort of had that like ladder to build up.
Paige, how about you?
Yeah, so I did my placement in a firm that specialized in a variety of different legal services. So they did litigation, corporate, there was some employment law, and then later on they expanded also to real estate. So I think that the placement was really vital in helping me to build kind of basic legal skills, applying the skills from TriOS and putting billing out clients and legal softwares and writing retainer letters and doing all those basic administrative skills that are necessary for any legal practice, and then acquiring more and more skills, and then kind of building your way up and working with clients and producing legal work. So it was really a super vital role for anyone who hasn't been in the legal field before, because communication and being detail oriented and different qualities like that are so important. I would just say, as a piece of advice, maybe to take criticism well and take constructive criticism and work on it, and don't get discouraged, because even though you've learned so much in your program, applying it in the real world can take some time to get used to. And so just really take it easy on yourself and learn the best you can. And you're not going to learn everything overnight, but definitely just be willing to stick it through to acquire those skills.
And Pilar, how about yourself?
I had a lot of luck, because Yannick, the lawyer, contacted me through LinkedIn first to ask me about my translation services. So same as Natalie, when we were all panicking about the internship, I reached out to her and I'm like, hi, do you take interns? And she's like, yes, absolutely. She set up a meeting. We chatted for like half an hour, and then I got her email saying, okay, here's your internship offer, etc. My internship was remote, which I appreciated at the time. I did get like a lot of experience from forms and filling out different forms, a lot of memos and etc. But I didn't get to go to court, and for me that was a sad moment. But now I think I'm gonna get it in this new job. So yeah, it was a good experience, but I would certainly advise that you get a in-person internship.
Perfect. So now after the internship, obviously the next hurdle and for Paige and Pilar came very quickly, just in terms of meeting the law side. I think it was like literally the next week there. So you lucked out and being able to write in November, as opposed to in Natalie's case in March. So maybe Natalie could tell us a little bit about kind of generally getting ready for that exam, and what are the things, if you can go back and think, hey, if I knew a little earlier about, or obviously the end result for all three is you passed and you have your licenses, but walk us through kind of getting ready for the licensing exam. And for those right now who are getting ready to write in, I think it's 5 weeks now, in July, maybe you can think back to where you were 5 weeks before your exam and kind of how you laid out and prepared for that date.
So I didn't so much have like a workout or a study schedule, the way that I've seen a lot of, sorry about the grandfather clock in the background. But I didn't have a schedule where like, oh, this day I'm going to study this many pages, this day. I just kind of did it wherever I could. And I sort of realized with the amount of work that I was doing at the time, I knew that I wouldn't want to do it after work. So I woke up at 4 a.m., some days at 3 a.m. before work, and I would study then, and then I would go to work, and then afterwards I'd have some free time. But it's slowly, I think within like the 5-week mark, like you're stating, at that point, what I had finished reading it once, and at that point I started doing all of the practice exams. So I would study in the morning, and then I would work, and then I would do practice exams after work. And it just really got to the point where like I kind of felt I was burning myself out because it was just constantly no rest, basically. So I had to start taking weekends off of studying. And I did sign up for your study course and I attended like 3 or 4 classes, but that just so happened to line up on my only day off from work. And I really wanted to catch up on sleep that day. So I kind of opted out of it, but I did get a lot of the information that I really needed out of it, which is which are the best practice exams to take. And I highly recommend EMOND. It's those are, and I've seen that recommendation time and again, whenever I talk about it, they always say those are the most similar practice exams that you can take to the actual thing. So I would highly recommend those. And don't be discouraged by the grades that you get on the exams, on the practice exams. I've failed a few of them. And obviously I got way too into my head thinking that like, oh, this means that I'm going to fail the actual exam. Just go over them a few times, see where you went wrong. And the best part about the EMOND exams is that not only will they tell you which answer is correct, but they'll put down a list of every single answer and why this one isn't correct and why this one specifically is correct. So you sort of start to look at like, what should I be looking for with my answers? What are they really looking for with these? What should I be keeping in mind when I'm selecting these answers? And first and foremost is don't overthink it. Always go with your gut. And that's kind of where I went wrong a bunch of times when I was doing the exams. But once I got that into my head, I noticed that my overall grades started to improve. So yeah, don't overthink it.
Paige, how about yourself there? You had so much going on, and then you throw the exam on top of everything. So how did you kind of make that all work?
I did. I was working, I was still in school. I think typical basic tips are always useful. And, you know, as Natalie just kind of touched on, take care of your mental health, make sure you get enough rest, try to reduce stress and anxiety, but also maybe don't make the same mistake I did. I think, you know, managing your time is really important, and to put in time to study like it's a closed book test, especially for this exam, because the timing of the exam it goes by so fast. Like you think, oh, I have 4 hours. No, like you'd have time goes by in an instant. So study like it's a closed book test, and only reference your materials if you know you have enough time, and then double check your answers with your materials once you're done, because I tried to check my answer section by section. And then when I looked up at the time, I realized that I was horrified to see that there was 1 hour left on the clock and I still had the rest of my exam to go. So I've never read so fast in my entire life, but the importance of managing your time. Don't rely on your materials, only if you don't have enough time to do so. And then I think Pilar's kind of the queen of index and organizing your materials. So I'll let her touch on that, but make sure you organize your materials so you can reference them quickly.
So Queen Pilar here about the indexing and organizing. But you can give us some of your tips and advice there in terms of getting ready for this licensing exam.
Would you like me to share the video I have of my materials?
If you can do it quickly or
I have it here.
Sure. I guess you can
Okay.
just share screen. I don't know if you gotta click the audio as well. I think if there's sound, but
Okay. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Oh, sorry. I don't. Yeah. So to prepare, I took 2 weeks off from work. I didn't answer my cell phone to anybody that wasn't my husband. The index, I bought it from Emon or well, JP has the knowledge. I did all the Emon tests. Also, what else? I printed everything out twice, so I have a copy. And I use a lot of colors, dividers, highlighters, and I only read the materials once, but I highlighted so much that I think I read it 3 times. What else? I even use emojis to say, "Oh my God, this case is so amazing," or any word that I wanted to use. What else? And on the day of the exam, I arrived early. And I had only 1 month to study because it was my decision, because the LSO offered the exam in November and we graduated in September. So Paige and I basically had October to do everything. So we did, and we managed to get our licenses. So yeah, colors, highlight, underline, and chapter dividers. Yes.
Thanks, Pilar. So let's kind of maybe expand a little bit on the exam. And one of the things, Paige said, even though it's open book, approach it like it's a closed book exam in terms of timing. Now, again, everyone I hear from, and I think the importance as well as from all the people I talk to that are sharing their advice to, and there's very different approaches, right? And I think sometimes people here, they'll say, "Hey, I'm going to do exactly what Paige did, or I'm going to do exactly what Natalie did, and that's going to equal to me getting licensed." And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but there's so many different approaches on how you can go into the exam. Now, the big thing that I think a lot of people get tripped up on is, it is open book. I mean, you may have had experience doing open book exams in school. Maybe the timing, right? I mean, remember, it's about 90 seconds approximately if you're taking a break during the exam to do those kinds of questions. So how did you find that, Natalie, doing an open book multiple choice exam, licensing exam there, the timing of 4.5 hours, and being in person in this room where it was probably like pin drop silence. You can hear people's pens or pencils scratching against the paper next to you. What do you think would best prepare you for that moment, or even going through it, looking back for others that are going to go through it in about 5 weeks? What do they have to be careful of and make sure that they're ready for?
So first piece of advice is get earplugs. I get really easily distracted by noises and things going on around me. So I just knew that would probably be the best step that I could take in terms of just focusing on what was in front of me and not getting distracted with everything that was going on around. And as far as timing goes, I knew that I was going to be worrying. This was probably my biggest worry, that I was going to run out of time. So I actually came up with like a little sheet that had, for every 10 questions, I wrote down like how much time should have passed and how much time I should have left. And then so for every 10 questions that I did on the exam, I would kind of reference that little sheet and be like, okay, I'm on question 20. This is how much time should have passed. This is how much I have left. And I would just make sure that I'm on track with that. And then I'd know, like, for the next 10 questions, I should probably pick up the pace a little bit, or like I can kind of take my time a little bit and sort of reference the book a little bit more with these next few questions. And I sort of paced myself out that way. But in the end, I kind of paced it out so that I should have somewhere around 20 to 25 minutes of time at the very end to go back on all the questions that I had like issues with. And I had a little list going on one of the pages where if for every question that I think this is the answer, but I'm not sure. Either way, answer it. Whether you're not sure of the answer or not, you don't know if you're going to run out of time at the end. You don't want to leave any blank answers. So just answer it whether you're not sure and just write it down. And then later on, if you do have time, just go back to it and then check. But I think I maybe had like 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the exam instead of what I had previously thought. So I just went over the first few questions and I got to the point where like there was one question that I erased it and changed my answer and I'm staring at it. And then I erased that one and went back to my original answer. I did that about 2 or 3 times before I was like, okay, no, that's it. I'm done. I'm not touching it anymore because I know I'm going to start second guessing myself. And who knows if I change an answer that was previously correct. So I just kind of left it at what it was. But I was dead set. Like I was so convinced that I failed the exam after I had written it. I was telling everybody, like, don't even ask how it went. I know that I failed and I passed. So just trust yourself with it, but do keep the time in mind. And I would kind of recommend that little sheet that I did with, like, write down what the times would be. That did help me a lot, honestly.
Now, Paige, did you have a similar experience there with the, you were saying that you're racing against the time. Maybe that could have helped keep you tracked until it was 1 hour remaining. But anything there about the open book exam and the multiple choice questions that, again, that may be different for others in terms of writing this type of exam and being prepared for it?
Yeah, I have never read so fast in my life, those last parts of the exam. But I would say it will be different for everyone. So just make sure that you're the most comfortable that you can make yourself when you're taking the multiple choice exam, and that you should probably go through the process of elimination. So whatever you think is the least likely to be the answer, get rid of that. What you think is the most likely, and then kind of choose between those options. And I'm sure there's a bunch of different strategies that you can look at in terms of taking multiple choice exams. That would be helpful. But in terms of making yourself comfortable during the exam, wear comfortable clothes. Make sure you know the rules of taking the exam, because, for example, if you bring a water bottle that's a glass, you will not be allowed to bring it in the exam room. And then if you're dying of thirst while you're taking the exam, you'll probably be uncomfortable. So make sure you know all the rules. Wear comfortable clothes. Don't wear big jackets, because they'll probably won't let you. They'll make you go back and put it in code check and go at the back of the line. So make sure that you know all the rules of actually taking the exam before you go in and you take it, so that you can be as comfortable as possible. And then also bring as many study materials as you need, but make sure they also coincide with the rules. For example, you can't bring any practice questions in the exam. They'll go through everything. They'll go through all your materials. They'll search everything. So just make sure you're following the rules in order to tailor the exam to what makes you most comfortable.
And Pilar, how about yourself?
Read carefully the rules, print them out, highlight them if you need them. Because, for example, I misunderstood a clear bag, like a grocery store bag, and it was a Ziploc bag only that you could bring with food or anything else you needed. Also bring food, please. You don't want to die of starvation or not drinking water. Remember that you are not allowed to bring, you are allowed to bring printed materials, but don't bring your expensive clothes or anything, because they will destroy them. Earplugs, for me, same as Natalie, are essential. I even had to remove my Medicaid bracelet because they told me, no, that's gonna bother some students. So I'm like, okay, and I removed it. With clothes, wear something comfortable. Take your time. If you're a smoker like me, arrive early so you can have a smoke. You can check the area. You can know where you're at. And at some point, don't listen to anybody else that the proctors. Just focus on the proctors, and that's it. Period. Yeah, that's my advice.
Now, in terms, I think someone said elimination, and certainly comes up to strategize against some of the questions there. Did you feel you had time to look through the questions, go through the choices, to eliminate some, and then I know, Natalie, you were saying, at the end you were like second guessing yourself on and you said, forget it, that's it, otherwise I'm going to go back and try to change some right answers perhaps into wrong answers. But kind of how in terms of attacking those kinds of questions with the resources you had, whether you had these nicely organized and color coded indexes and notes, or you were relying on maybe notes you had made yourself, summaries. How did you find kind of approaching, let's say, question by question, in addition to your timing guide, right, to keep yourself on the right track? on the exam itself, in terms of, I mean, again, and don't tell me anything about substantive questions or anything, because that's against the law study rules there. But how did you find dealing with that?
If I came across a question where any part of me felt like it knew the correct answer, I would select it, mostly because I knew that I was time limited. But any of the questions that I felt like I sort of wanted to look into it a little bit more, it's like it's an even split between like these two answers, and I'm sure one of them is more correct, but they both sound correct. Then I would reference my index, and I went all out with my index. It was size 10 font, double column, 40 pages. So when I was studying, any single point that I felt like this could be touched on with the exam, which was essentially like 20 points per page, I would put it right into that index. And I would reference that, and I managed to find everything, that minus maybe like 2 or 3 different questions, or like I have no idea where to find this in the material. But for the most part, I was able to find that. And I have to say that making my own index definitely kind of hammered in that knowledge into my head, and like really kind of made me like retain it a little bit better, having to manually write everything out rather than already kind of relying on a pre-prepared sort of index that someone else put together. I just felt like going through it myself and doing it all from scratch really was the main thing that made me comfortable with knowing that I know where to, maybe not know what the answer is to everything, but I know where to find the answer to everything. So I would mostly suggest spend a lot of time on your index, because that's the main thing that's going to help you during the exam. And it did definitely quicken the process of having to find those answers throughout.
And would you estimate how long it took you to kind of prepare that? I know obviously you were starting days at 3 a.m. and so forth, but I mean, I think obviously the more time you put into that, and it's your own, and you can work with it and revise it, and you know how to use it and where to find things, it's going to give you the best time on the exam, because you know, okay, it's on right here, you know, it's under C, under the right side of the page, and then quickly go to it. But just for anyone thinking about making their own index, like how long of a process do you would imagine it took you?
It happened at the same time as I was reading the material. So roughly a month and a half to write the initial first draft. And then as I started reading it through it the second time, that's when I started to like notice that like, oh, I put this wrong alphabetically, or like I should probably add this in somewhere, and like the additional, and kind of like just sort of putting it all together nicely towards the end. But like the initial index took probably a month and a half to do, and that was with every single day putting at least 3 to 4 hours into it.
Thanks, Natalie. How about yourself, Paige, in terms of the, no, again, you were saying it was the timing there, but how did you find, and you were also saying initially, I approached it like it was a closed book exam, that I rarely went into the material, or maybe you can kind of tell us how you found that with the multiple choice questions, or especially if you were stuck between a couple of choices, of how did you ultimately resolve them and move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think even though you're so limited in the time that you have to take the exam, that it's important to thoroughly read every single option that you're provided, because some of the answer choices may seem pretty similar, or then maybe there's a word in there that you're like, oh, wait, that changes the whole sentence into the opposite of what I thought it maybe meant. So just be very thorough in the reading of the options that you have in order to make the best selection. So whatever you think is the most likely to be the answer, that's what you should select. And then again, if you have time at the end, then go back and check for the ones that you're unsure. I would suggest maybe during the exam, highlight the ones that you selected that you think, okay, I think this is the most likely to be, but I'm not sure, I might want to double check. So, but if you're really sure, I wouldn't even check those answers, because you don't have time to check every single answer. Just the ones that you're maybe you're less sure about. I would suggest to check those at the end, only if you do have time.
Well, how about yourself?
We are allowed to mark the questions booklet. So what I did was not highlight, but round all the important parts of the questions. I mean, of the case. So I wouldn't make mix up mistakes, like answer a question about JP with some information about page, for example. Also, same as the guy said, if I felt the answer was this, I would select this, and that's it. Like, do not second guess it. And I had, like, I would say 15 to 20 minutes at the end to check some questions, and I checked 5. And it was mainly because of the length of the case. So I was getting tired. So that's why I went back to those. But yeah, that's it.
And I think you had said before you'd purchased an index, probably from Paralegal Pathway Ontario, I believe. How did you find me compared to like Natalie's, 6 weeks there working thoroughly, or at least 6 weeks, right? Working with, going through the material. How, I mean, is this, did you find that it was valuable for you to sort of get something there? Did you edit it yourself afterwards, or did you just kind of like print it and use it for some practice questions and then went into the exam? Or how do you kind of make use of that?
It was absolutely valuable. One of the best investments I've done in my life, because I didn't have the time or the dedication that Natalie had. And the only edit that I made to the document was something about WSIB, I believe, that I highlighted. And yes, what I did after I got it and after I read the whole material was take the sample questions from Emon and answer everything, and but by using the index. So I had already at least the movement in my head. And what else? Yeah, that's it.
And I guess maybe the last thing here about the licensing exam, anything general, anything you may not have mentioned, for anyone writing this exam or listening to this and getting ready to write their exam in the next few weeks, few months, anything that you could add there in terms of your preparation, or even maybe the other thing that we don't talk about is after you finish the exam and waiting the 4 to 8 weeks. Anything you want to add there, Natalie?
So it was I think it was right on 6 weeks that we got the results. They said anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks you would get them. I was more or less thinking, because I was so certain that I failed, I was more or less thinking of it as like, oh, it's like a month and a half of a break from studying before I have to get right back to what I was doing before and like repurchase all of the materials and redo everything that I had already done. But then when I got the results, it took me a minute to actually register it because I was so expecting to see fail that I'm just staring at the word pass, and it's just not registering in my head at all. I was actually at work when I read it, and then I just kind of like blurred out. I was kind of like, oh my God, I passed. And like the paralegal behind me was like, oh, congratulations. But I definitely wasn't expecting that result, but enjoy the time afterwards, because like I was thinking, ignorance is bliss. So take the well-earned rest after studying for that exam.
Paige, how about you? Anything to add, I guess, either preparing for the exam or as Natalie was talking about after in the waiting game there?
Yeah, I think pre and post exam anxiety is very real. So at the end of the day, there's lots of tips that you could use, but really just do what's best for you in your life, and don't stress yourself out too much over anything. After I took the exam, I felt absolutely sick to my stomach. I was like, I don't think I passed it. I didn't think I passed it either, just because it was such a stressful experience, and you kind of hype yourself up so much. And then when I was also at work when I got my results, and I was just having a kind of bad week, like bad things were happening around me. And I was like, no, not today. Like, I don't want to get the results today. I didn't even want to open it. But then once you pass it, you kind of realize that you really were over stressing yourself, and you were just giving yourself so much extra anxiety for no reason. As long as you do your best and you just take it, it's out of your hands from there. So once you write the exam, it's out of your hands. just enjoy your life, relax. What's the worst thing that could happen? Like, you could take it again in the future, but it's a good experience, and you're learning as you're studying. So just don't stress too much.
Or how about yourself?
I think you might remember, but even before the exam, I was feeling pretty confident because I studied a lot. So after the exam, I was like, yeah, it was a good exam. And afterwards, I got to my home and I basically slept for like a day or something. Just try to manage your stress and throw all those bad energies or anxiety out of your body, and then wait, but forget about it. Like, it's same as if you submitted a visa application, forget about it, you're gonna get an answer. So I did that, and same as the Paige and Natalie, I got my results at work and I cried a lot. But yeah, everybody was happy, so just don't overthink it. Study, make the right decision, go to JP's classes, and take advantage of all the things you have, all the tools you can get to make this easier for yourself.
I grilled Pilar after the exam. I was like, how are you so calm? Like, you feel fine? Because I was so anxious after. Yeah, it's true. She really was calm about it afterwards.
Yeah, and I guess that's in the end, and all three of you passed. So regardless of what you felt or how you felt, I mean, the end result hopefully speaks to the success you had on the exam. And in your mind, you can think, whether you were number one or 999 at the end, it doesn't really matter because you now have. I mean, still you have to go through a little bit of the process afterwards to do some affidavits and commissioning and things like that, but. Then you got your license, and now you're all looking at the next steps. I know obviously it's still relatively new, right? It's in Natalie's case, it's been a couple of months, and Pilar and Paige, your case, it's been 6 months, not even 6 months. So I mean, anything there for people who are, whether again beginning, during, after the program, preparing for the exam, kind of what your sort of thought process is now onto what the next things they're going to do. What have you started doing? What were you doing post getting your license, and what are you looking to do over the next 6 months, couple of years, and beyond? So I'll start with you, Natalie.
At the moment, I'm willing to stick around where I am right now. He's still willing to teach me, and he's very patient with me. It's a good stepping stone for me. So I'm going to see where I can go from there. But at the moment, I'm kind of fine with sort of learning what I can from him. And I do appreciate the fact that he does tell me like when he's going to go into trial so I can watch it on Zoom as well. So I am getting that hands-on experience as well. And he's having me go in for like first appearances and adjournments and all of that. So it's giving me that nice familiarity that once I do get like a full-time position somewhere, then I can really apply that, and hopefully it'll take me a little bit further than if I had just jumped ship right then. So I'm just gonna kind of see where things go right now.
Paige, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I feel like I've acquired so much knowledge already. I think being a paralegal, especially in the first stages, consultation and supervision is super important because you do need to make sure with all this power and knowledge that you have that you're competent in the work that you do and you're applying it responsibly. So I also did some work for a criminal firm and gained a lot of experience there. So that was a big learning curve, but I feel like I've really learned the process. And now I'm also working on opening a practice under my own name.
And finally, Pilar.
Well, I'm leaving my job this Friday, and I'm starting on a firm on Monday. I like to start from the basis, and even though I have the degree, I'm there to learn. Like, of course, they're gonna train me and everything, but I think I have to absorb everything they can teach me. And from there, then I can make a decision. Of course, if the firm would have me for many years to come, that would be amazing. So yeah, I'm still learning. I'm happy to have this degree, happy to have these lovely people around me. So yeah, I'm happy.
Perfect. So, final question for all three of you. I mean, any final words of advice for anyone listening, right? So again, you can focus on any piece that we've talked about, and we covered a lot, right? Between deciding to get into the paralegal program, accelerating and succeeding through the paralegal program, getting into your internship, preparing for the licensing exam, and even the steps now post license, and looking to build and start on your legal career. So any final words of wisdom that you impart on anyone listening? So again, I'll start with you, Natalie.
I would definitely say keep a record of everything when you're working. Not even just when you talk to someone in court, you write down their name and what you spoke about and what they told you, what time and day you spoke to them, but also whenever they tell you about sort of inter-office things that they want you to do, they hate repeating themselves. So just keep a record of absolutely everything. Keep yourself organized, and that's probably going to be one of your biggest assets moving forward.
Paige?
I would probably just leave it off with take care of your mental well-being. You're serving the public. You have a very ethically heavy, responsible job. So make sure, whether it's professionally, academically, or personally, that you reach out if you need help.
And finally, Pilar, you get the last word here.
Don't be cocky. Even though you have a degree, you're still a human being, and everybody else around you deserve respect. Not because we know law, we are superior. So yeah, don't be cocky.
Perfect. So once again, thanks so much for all three of you for taking the time to speak with me and speak for anyone here that's listening. I wish you all the best, and again, certainly, as you're, I guess maybe still instructor. I mean, like, Paige still calling me sir here, but in terms of, and I'd like to see you come back over the years, check in again, and again, the best part obviously is seeing the success stories afterwards, right? Because students that were like some of you, right, or all of you, right, at a year ago, we're just getting ready to finish the program, and as Paige said, we were students. We were listening to some of the people, some of your former students that were a year or 2 years before us, and they were saying, well, I finished the program and here's what I'm doing. And now you're those people, and the people that are listening to this, eventually they'll be back here, and the cycle will continue on, hopefully all the way down and through the program. So once again, thanks so much. Wish you all the best, and wish everyone all the best that is tuning in. Take care.